Okay. Well, hi, Natalia. Welcome back. I'm excited. We are going to be digging deeper into scaling a business in a way that makes sense for you and your brand, which I'm so excited to talk about. I feel like it's been heard in a few different spaces, and especially trying to figure out like what makes sense for you and what helps you stay true to what you want to build. So, thank you again for coming back.
Yes, no, I'm so excited to dig deep on this.
Yes. And if you haven't listened yet, head over to our Spotify or wherever you get your podcast to catch up on our Let's Talk More on Monday, where we talked the beginning of the brand. We talked about brands being held accountable by the people, voting with your wallet, and all of the good things. But you were kind of tip of the iceberg in our first conversation about what the future of your brand could look like. And scaling was part of that conversation. And part of your business model of sustainable fashion is the fact that you make every piece by hand. You, the
Yeah.
designer, the curator, all of the things. What when you first got started, I mean, because thinking about a business and how much you want it to scale is a big question. It's an evolving question with many, many answers. Have you thought of your business scaling in different ways from the time you got started to now? And what does that look like?
Yeah, I definitely have. I think when I first started and I was hand making everything myself, I was like, oh, eventually it'd be so cool to have like manufacture, like obviously, ethical is still small batch, but like would love for like other people to be making it so I can focus on like marketing, whatever. But like the longer I've done this, the more I'm like, but like I love sewing. That's why I've started this. It's because I love creating. And I think the hard thing with scaling is that whenever I like, listen to business podcasts or talk to like, bigger entrepreneurs that have like, multi-million dollar businesses and whatever, which are very inspiring to talk to and like listen to,
Mhm.
everything they always talk about is like, okay, like scaling and how do you make it a multi-million dollar business and like blah blah blah. And I'm like, that sounds great. I just don't think I care to be that big. Like I don't think every business needs to be a multi-million dollar business. And I
Mhm.
think that's maybe a controversial statement from an entrepreneur. But I think there's so much focus in just like, let's make it the biggest thing in the world and like be the richest you could be, which is great. I would also love to have money. I'm not saying I wouldn't. Like, I would love to make enough to just like live life and whatever and not worry about it. But I think there's so much focus on just like being the biggest thing you could be and being the next, whatever. And I think a lot of people have asked me if I want to be like the next like Chanel or like the next like big luxury brand. Like I just don't think I care to be that big. Like I
Mhm.
don't I don't think every business has to be that big and I don't think we all need to have these like crazy like ideas of what our businesses need to be. And I think especially being in the sustainability space, it's like, okay, is it really sustainable if I become this giant like conglomerate? Even if I'm like still ethically producing, if
Mhm.
I'm like producing thousands of pieces a year, is that really like why I started this? Like no. Like I want intentionality.
Mhm.
So it's always interesting to like talk to other entrepreneurs and be like, oh, I'm actually like really okay with where I'm at. I'd love to be a little bit bigger, sure, but like if I stay like this forever, I wouldn't be that mad about it. Like I'm
Yeah.
sustaining myself, I'm making pieces, it's still slow, intentional production. Like, what's so bad about it, you know?
Right. I love how many questions you ask yourself too, because as we've been in business, I feel like I've had to ask myself, what does success look like? And I think when I think about this brand as a success, that does not equate to millions and millions of dollars. I think when I got started as a business owner, I was like, this would be amazing for it to be this big, big thing where I have this huge team and I do all of this fun stuff. And granted, I would love to do fun stuff with fun people all of the time. I mean, and be
Of
paid for
course.
it. Why would I not want that? But to what extent?
Right.
And figuring out what does success really look like. And I know at this point for me it's that we continue to grow in a way that supports our mission and coming back to making opportunities reachable for everyone. But I love that for you you're asking like this whole list of questions, because sometimes scaling isn't always up and out. Maybe it's more depth into that intentionality, into the production, into these different things. When Because I think that that's also hard to I don't want to say balance, but when you talk to so many entrepreneurs and you hear all of these things, why comes up. Well, it's like, well, why not? Like, why not scale it? Why can't you do both? How have you kind of answered that question as you've gone through this understanding of what you want and what your brand to be?
Yeah, I think it's always just comes down to like the why of my brand has always been like very mission driven, like you. Like I, have a mission with my brand and my business. Like I want to make a difference in the industry and I want to like help people kind of start their sustainable, ethical fashion journey. And I think that when I'm talking to business owners of businesses that like, not that they don't have a mission, every business has some sort of mission, but when it's not kind of like, what's the right word? Like, it's not like giving back necessarily or like doing something to kind of like change industry standards or whatever. It's just different types of businesses. And I think I've just had to separate myself and be like, that works for what you're doing, but like for me and like what I'm trying to do with my brand, like it's just gonna be a different path, and like that's fine. Either are good, but I think I just like I can't like put myself in the same box as every other business owner ever because I think like just mission driven businesses are just gonna function differently because I
Yeah.
think our first thought isn't like ourselves and like making ourselves like the biggest CEO ever. Our biggest thought is like, okay, how much change can I make in the world, and like how much of a difference can I make? And sometimes that just doesn't equate to like becoming this rich, wealthy CEO, and that's fine because I'd
Mhm.
rather make a difference than like make a crazy amount of money. Like, why do I need that when I can like give that back too? Not to say that I don't want to make money. I would love to make money as every business owner does. I feel like I always have to preface the fact that like no, I would actually like to also be rich, but just like making sure everything else is like settled first, and I don't want to put myself first in business in that sense. But it is always just like a weird conversation to have with people. Like I think a lot of people just aren't very receptive to it, and they're just like, okay, like how's your business gonna survive the like test of time if you're not scaling and blah blah blah. I'm like, I promise you I will be okay. There's so many like mom and pop businesses that survive so many years and they're not scaling and becoming this like chain of restaurants or whatever around the country and they make it fine. Like I think we should support that and like that should be great too, you know?
Mhm.